Artists from here and around the country are influencing the Wisconsin art scene. On this episode of The Arts Page, meet a Texas painter capturing nostalgic Wisconsin moments. Ride along with an art exhibit bringing together artists from Milwaukee and Chicago. Discover a Milwaukee sculptor whose art looks like they could come to life. And a creative commentary on consumption through couture at a local art museum. That's all coming up on this edition of The Arts Page. I'm your host, Sandy Maxx. Welcome to The Arts Page. We have a wealth of artists and talent in our area. And in this episode, you'll also see creative people who are inspired by Wisconsin's artistic culture. Nationally known artist George Kovash may call Texas his home, but his paintings of Wisconsin are influenced by a sense of nostalgia. He loves to make his works look as real as possible, while giving the viewer a chance to step into the scene.
Every painting I do, I can see that I can do it better. It challenged me to go on and create and try different things. My name is George Kovach, and I am a fine artist. I do every kind of conceivable art there is. I do Santa Clauses, I do nostalgia, I do a lot of landscapes. I do everything I'm challenged with. I've always enjoyed art as a kid. I like to draw and paint and that. I just was fortunate where I live in Texas that art was selling, and so I stepped out of my job as a law enforcement and started painting full-time back in 1972. So it's been a long career, and I've got quite a large body of work out there. My landscapes, you don't have to please anybody but yourself. That's what I like about landscapes. And a tree is a tree, you know. So I kind of balance my life with painting for myself, which is landscapes, and then painting other things, commissions for other people. In Texas, I do a lot of Texas Hill Country paintings. That takes care of that side of me. Up here, I do a lot of nostalgic things, and I enjoy that immensely too, because it's such a diversion from just plain landscapes, and I can build on houses and scenes like that. It reminds me of my growing up days. I grew up on a farm in Ohio and then moved to Florida, so I've seen both the North and the South, and so I draw on my experiences as a kid. A lot of that is imagined. I'll see something, I might sketch it there on location, or I'll take photographs, but I like to take a piece here, a piece there, and then build my own town and just create my own world, in fact. It's just two different worlds I play in, fine art and kind of commercial art too. The painting is titled Treasured Times, and it is a compilation of different scenes that I've seen. I've got a building that I actually saw in Georgetown, north of Austin, Texas. I really was inspired by that, and I used that as one of the main buildings in the painting. I set it back into the 1950s, so I used models of a Ford and a Chevrolet, the popular cars then. And then I put the theater in there, and gimbals and pennies and a lot of things that we recognize from the days back in the 50s and 60s. There's the Marcus Theater, which is a really noted spot in Milwaukee and this area. The final thing was put the boy and the little dog and the birds in. And which just kind of completed the whole picture. All that will bring back a lot of memories. I start with small little thumbnail sketches. And then normally I'll just take a canvas and I'll just start right off the bat. I'll draw it in. If it's a building, I usually draw that in first. On my landscapes, it's a little different situation. I just go directly with brush and paint and start painting. But when you do detailed, you want to be correct, so I use photographs, and I just use all the tools that I muster up to get these things into the right perspective and such. I'll probably do an underpainting of acrylic, and which doesn't harm the painting or anything, and then I paint oil over the top of that. So that's just kind of the process I've been used to all these years, and it's worked well for me. If you get up close, it looks like Impressionism, but I like to make it look as real as possible, but yet still I'm not too crazy about making it look like a photograph. I want the person to see that I have my own personality in my painting. I wish they could get that warm feeling like back in the 50s and the 60s, how times are a little bit slower then, and get a nice feeling. That shouldn't be your main goal, is to sell your work. You should be painting to satisfy your creativity. I just paint for myself, and if I satisfy myself, then that's fine with me.
You may recognize George Kovash's work. He's been a featured artist on the Channel 10 Great TV Auction many times. His latest work, called Treasured Times, features a nostalgic Wisconsin street scene. Discover more of George Kovash's paintings at the Northwoods Craftsman's Gallery website, northwoodscraftsman.com. Another artist from Texas wanted to check out more of the Milwaukee art scene. Christopher Sperandio of Houston created a bus that is a mobile artist in residency. He made a special trip to Milwaukee last summer to encourage collaboration with artists from Chicago. Get on board the traveling art bus called the Cargo Space.
When you drive something odd like this, you're going to get a lot of public reaction. My name is Christopher Sperandio. I'm an artist, and I guess you can call me the bus driver. The Cargo Space is, I like to call it, the world's first mobile artist residency program. The Cargo Space started its life as a diesel transit bus. The idea of Cargo Space came from a lot of research that I've been doing for about 12, 13 years into alternative living schemes. So small living, converting buses into houses, not exactly living off the grid, but living without somebody else's permission. Well, the Cargo Space originated in Houston, Texas, but I've driven it I think about 2,000 miles is what I'm at right now. I knew that I wanted to bring it up to Wisconsin so that I could engage with the very vital art scene that's here. Mixing artists from around the region, and also connecting with artists in Chicago. And so we're here to sort of mix things up a little bit. The project with the Cargo Space in Milwaukee and Chicago is an attempt to, maybe even as a gesture, get artists from Chicago and Milwaukee to interact a little more, and to get to see what the lives of artists are like in those different places. And so the artists who get involved with the project are people that are wanting to experience the world in a different way, but as artists, as professionals. They want to engage with the world in a way that isn't defined by the gallery or defined by their studio. The exhibitions that we're doing are unlike normal, standard gallery museum exhibitions. The artist process is a big part of the exhibition. And usually that's a part that artists try to hide. It's a kind of bizarre request to potentially collaborate, to do 2 exhibitions simultaneously and in a short amount of time. Some of the artwork in the exhibition exists as twins. So at the same time a work is in Milwaukee, its twin or its sibling is in Chicago. Some of the artists have chosen to engage in these blind collaborations where they basically mail or send each other material and then work on it and then exhibit it as their artwork. Some of the work is actually traveling back and forth, so in its absence in the exhibition, all there was a nail on the wall.
So I typically work with non-traditional materials, a lot of building materials from the home. And so I kind of create relationships and I let them balance off of each other. And so then for this show, I essentially was given all of the materials that I worked with. I wouldn't typically work with 2D materials, and so I just allowed that to be a limitation and just really sat down and began organizing in a way for fun, to really just create a playing field, to just see what can happen when two people are more interacting rather than me sitting down and interacting with an object. I have a ton of small works that are exhibited all throughout the space, which is not typically how the space is utilized. And so I think that that gets people to reconsider what a gallery space is and what places are the right places to exhibit work.
The artwork in the exhibition runs a really strange gamut, from very studio-based artworks to garbage. So you can see that there's a range of reactions from very carefully crafted to borderline incoherent.
The idea of travel and movement in particular was a shared theme. Things were either literally moving back and forth between Milwaukee or Chicago, or ideas were kind of traveling back and forth.
Well, the funny thing about these exhibitions is I don't care what the casual viewer experiences. My interest is in meeting these artists, in developing these exhibitions, and in the interactions that the artists are having with each other. I like that. It makes me laugh to think that very savvy gallery goer is not going to have a typical experience in the gallery.
I felt like I could just play and have fun with it, and so I didn't need to feel so much pressure because I had someone telling me on the other end, I don't really care about the end results. And so it's like, great, I'm just gonna go for it. I think there's still smart works that still have a presence without kind of all of that vulnerability or anxiety behind making them. We're artists because we're makers, we're creative, and we can do that in a number of ways rather than just serving an audience all of the time.
This exhibition makes me want to be a better artist to work with. I think every artist should have this experience.
Cargo Space's travelogue of their 3,715-mile artistic journey is being transformed into a book, which will be available later in 2015. See where the Cargo Space has been and where it's headed next on their website, thecargospace.com. What about art that comes to life? Milwaukee artist Marc Sijan's life-size sculptures are so realistic, people are often fooled or at least have to do a double take. The most important thing to Sijan is not just the incredible detail in his work, but also capturing a moment of human emotion that brings his sculptures to life.
I think some of the greatest artwork is that which challenges. And I want somebody to carry away this image with them long after they've seen it. They don't want to see something that they've already seen before. They want to see something new and fresh. My name is Marc Sijan. I'm an artist, and my specialty is hyperrealism. I deal with life-size figurative sculptures. Realism or hyperrealism, there was detail that you may not expect, almost photographic, that was brought into sculptures. It's true to life right down to the details, in my case, of fingerprints and footprints. I went to undergraduate work, and I was going to be a teacher, and they asked me, what would you like to teach? And I said, how about English? And so I started taking the classes. I also had to take an art class, a basic art course. And I took it, and I loved it. And I said, geez, I could do this. I could teach this. I'll teach art. I hadn't any other formal education in high school or anything in the way of art, but I just really enjoyed it. I really loved it. So that was the start. Always liked the figure, the human anatomy. Always liked the idea of hyperrealism, or the perfection of the sculpture, not only at the skin level, but also internally. It was the emotion and the internalized spirit that became the real focus in the last number of years. Well, the posings or the concepts are the most important part of the entire sculpture. The concept of what they're saying, and I try to make them thought-provoking, something with a soul, something with a story, a message. The concept is where it starts. It's where actually most of my time is spent, is trying to come up with a concept, kind of come up with the pose. And then I select the model, and I try to find the model that would be most fitting, younger or older, a certain size, a certain quality of their face. I try to find that person, a neighbor, friend, relatives. I stop people in the street sometimes and ask them if they'd like to, be part of what I'm doing. I really want to do more of the common man. Very often, people that maybe others don't even notice, the ordinary man, the fellow on the street that you might just pass by. And I also like a lot of character. I like faces that have a certain look, a certain quality to them that maybe relates to the theme or the story that I'm trying to tell within the sculpture. Then as far as clothes, it would then again follow the theme, wherever the theme happens to be. I'd ask them very often to bring their own clothes in. That may work. Or I'd go to the thrift shops and find different clothes that they could wear. And all those decisions, the prosthetic eyes, the hair, and everything else, is then determined. I do life casting directly from the human anatomy. And at that 1 second, that one moment, they have to capture the mood of what I'm trying to have them to do. If it's feeling good or feeling bad or smiling, they have to be able to try to hold that or capture that. So that emotion is very, very important within the face and within the body language. It's one of the most important things I have to do and try to get my model to do, or try to correct it maybe later on if I possibly can. Polyester resin, or resin, is the base material, and then I finished off with artist oil paints. There's approximately 15 coats of paint that are layered on, one on top of the other, to give it a skin-like translucency with the paint. So you have resin, you have artist oil paints, and then the mixed media being all the other props or clothes or hair, prosthetic eyes that are used on the sculptures. I'm always looking for a model. I'm always looking for a subject, something out of the ordinary that's not normal. It often will be the person themselves or maybe what they're doing. They all have a story. The viewer needs to figure out what the story is. Sometimes I tell people, often I don't, to allow the viewer kind of fill in the blanks and try to have their interpretation of what they see. Life's experiences are often painted on the faces of these sculptures, and you try to determine from what walk of life did they come from, what their occupation is, what they're thinking, what their whole family environmental situation is like, and so you get to kind of think about all these things. Most people haven't seen themselves in a three-dimensional format. We all have photographs, two-dimensional renderings, and to see a three-dimensional rendering, they don't even know what to say. They look around, they say, oh, you got all the detail, you even got that one little mole. So they're always fascinated. Well, there is some confusion about, is it a real person? And that's not my main thing, isn't to try to fool people, but that is what happens. And I spend a lot of attention, a lot of time on this finer detail. So there isn't any of those signs, but they react to them and trying to figure out, again, what this person is trying to do or trying to say, or what the story is. The evolution of a piece takes years. It really does. Very often, maybe the core of the piece is done in, say, 6 months. But then there's always something I always look at a piece, I say I could improve that could get better, I could change that. And I'm always poking, I'm always analyzing pieces as I go. I think a lot of people look at these pieces at the surface level, at the technique, but it's really the internal emotion that is significant about these pieces. You really need to look inside yourself. It needs to be part of you, something you enjoy, something that you like, something that is about you. And the best pieces are when they're about you and when they're truthful. And only honesty and truth within what you're displaying are going to be the purest pieces, and they're going to be the best pieces.
Marc Sijan is ranked #1 in the world for his hyper-realistic life-size sculptures. And you can see the sculpture of his dad as a security guard in uniform in the lobby of the Wisconsin Center in downtown Milwaukee. Be fascinated by more of his sculptures on his website, marcsijan.com. Finally, sweet treats stimulated the creativity of our next artist. Charlotte Kruk of California found that what she was eating could impact her art. The bright colors and candy wrappers contained personal and profound concepts. Kruk explains as she takes us on a tour of her couture clothing at an exhibit at the Racine Art Museum.
This project and my own artwork it's very personal. And a lot of it is looking at myself as a consumer and looking at my own sins and forcing myself to save every package that I consume in knowing that, hey, I'm gonna share that with the world. My name is Charlotte Kruk, and I am an artist and high school sculpture arts teacher. We were on a family vacation trip, and I had eaten now and laters, and there was no garbage can in sight. And you know, what do? You carry these all day? And I started to think about this packaging, which I was working with, and then I started to, in my mind, see them as textiles and see sewing them back together and becoming this original sheet that they had been cut out of to become just the little individual candy wrappers. All of the effort and engineering that goes into brands and making the product and keeping the product sanitary, you know, for consumers, and then it's just waste. And so we produce so much waste on this planet, and I just thought, you know, okay, I'm gonna hold on to these wrappers because look at what my brain is doing with putting them back together. And I sewed my first wearable sculpture at that point. It's been a tough learning curve to get to making these wearable sculptures. The title of this exhibition at the Racine Art Museum is Consumer Couture, The Politics of Having. It's a way for us as consumers to look at how we consume. So the politics of having is about needing and wanting and having, and at what point we make choices as consumers. Originally, all of my materials, I was the sole collector. So every candy wrapper, every candy bar, every candy that I consumed, I saved. And, you know, likewise with all of the toothpaste tubes, that's me, that's brushing my teeth. And so the collections take a long time to evolve, and it takes a long time to collect enough materials to actually make something wearable.
Racine Art Museum, we're very focused on the handcrafted, and our windows on 5th Gallery. The artist is given the opportunity to install work for a year. They have a lot of challenges. It's 90 feet long and 3 feet wide. They have to hang things, they can't put things on the window. So it's a really nice way to see artists sort of expand their thought process about their own work.
What I've done is tried to fill each of those windows with a little vignette or a little story. Part of my concept is this idea of consumption and how everything starts out very sort of organized, and it's all, you know, it was no big deal that I went and had a cup of coffee, but then when it starts to be the consumption and the overconsumption and it starts to fall into chaos. One of the windows is called baggage. I've taken old Samsonite luggage and I've reinvented it or repurposed it, covering it with Dum Dum candy packaging, and then made these fantastically oversized luggage tags, which are the 7 deadly sins. And they're living in the window with Mr. Goodbar. He is experiencing life with the flavors of the month. And the flavors of the month are the 12 Barbies that are clothed in dresses that are made out of Dum Dum packaging. So the concept of luggage as baggage was the bigger idea that was happening there. The middle window is a wearable sculpture that I made quite a few years ago, and it's made out of 31 flavors, Baskin-Robbins, ice cream taster spoons, and I've drilled holes in them like a button and then stitched each of them onto this dress, and the dress itself is actually made out of recycled piano bags. And then within that scene is 365 silver-plated spoons that have been drilled and hung on monofilament to look like this giant kind of like sunburst moving out away from her body. And so this idea of our plastic culture versus this kind of like old world money culture in our modern society, we can sort of pretend to be whoever we are. The Chewy Fruit Twins are 2 wearable sculptures that look very similar. One is made from Starburst packaging, and the other is made from Now and Later packaging. And they're intended to look like twins. And if you're a candy consumer, you know that both of those candies are fairly similar. There's a little girl mannequin that looks up at the 2 wearable sculptures, and to her, in this scenario, they look like piñatas. Behind her, there's sort of like party banners, but they're cut with Old English lettering, 14 virtues. And the concept of the child being fed these words of wisdom. And so will Tallulah, who's wearing, you know, a Hello Kitty coloring book dress with a giant crayon bow. Will she, in fact, take a virtuous path? Will she break the piñata and find treasure, or will she break the piñata and find chaos?
We dress in a way that sort of reflects who we are, and these figures, so to speak, these people that are represented through mannequins are literally surrounded by the things that they consume. And I think that that is really important in a very capitalist culture. This would appeal to people because it's a way for her to sort of address larger, almost more global issues, but on a scale that's actually literally a human scale through the garments. There's a humor in it and a kind of extravagance in a certain way, but also I think it's a nice vehicle for her to address bigger issues.
To some degree, it's fun to see other people's response to the work in hopes that people kind of take witness to, hey, that is trash that she's working with, and look at how she's changed it and hopefully made me think about it in a different way and think about how I am consuming on this planet.
Charlotte Kruk's eye-catching couture was recently updated at the Racine Art Museum's Windows on 5th Gallery. Be sure to stop by now through July of 2015. Catch more of Charlotte Kruk's wearable sculptures at her website, KrukTart.com. For more information on this week's features, visit our website at mptv.org and click on the Arts page. Or like us on Facebook at the Arts page for updates and join our conversations there. Next time on the Arts page, go behind the scenes of the Florentine Opera Company's recent production of the Grammy Award-winning Elmer Gantry. Meet an artist using his paintings to tell stories and explore images created by a thoughtful contemporary Arab photographer. I'm Sandy Maxx. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to sharing more art with you on the next episode of The Arts Page.